All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Brenda Pena, principal of Waltham High School. We are going to begin our PTO meeting, and I just wanted to begin with introductions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Lear. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Waltham High School PTO. Meg?
Hi, I'm Meg Silver. I'm one of the co-chairs of the PTO.
Missing from tonight is Susan Bingham, our third co-chair. And tonight we are being joined by several members from the Waltham Partnership for Youth who will be presenting the results of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is going to be very interesting to see what the middle and high school students have to say about risky behaviors in students. So, welcome to everyone. We have mostly the presentation will be the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. At the end, we hope that there will be time for discussion and feedback, and that will be open not only to questions about the behavior survey, but also to general questions for the PTO or for Mrs. Pena. So, as mentioned, there are 3 PTO co-chairs. Our teacher representative is Maria Luisa Rodriguez. And joining us tonight from the Waltham Partnership for Youth, we have Shanisha Christmas, Magali, I hope I'm getting that right, Garcia Plech, and Ivy Watts. And before we get into that presentation, we'll just have a quick update from Ms. Pena.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to share with families that we have my first parent coffee hour this Friday, October 29th, from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. The meeting Google ID is there. There is a phone number that you could use to log in to connect as well. What I will ask is that you please identify yourself when you do call via phone. Sometimes it's a bit challenging. Also linked here on the slides that we will share with all of you is the calendars, extracurricular and activities. We are adding new clubs every day, which is exciting. We have our new affinity groups as well, our WPS school calendar, and then our happenings for October. So today we had our PSAT makeups for students who missed the day or had medical illnesses and weren't able to attend. We have our staff professional development on the 2nd. There's no school that day. And the most important one is the end of quarter 1, which is November 5th. Our SATs are scheduled for the 6th. And on the 9th and the 10th is our MCAS retakes for, it's mostly our senior students and some junior students who are taking the math and ELA MCAS retakes. And then we are so excited to bring senior review back live in person on the 17th, 18th, and 19th. I know that there's a lot of questions around Aspen. So what I would say is I created this Google form to allow you to ask any questions. I will do my best to get those answers for you for Friday. It is something that I will share with our IT team to get any of your questions answered. So I'm now going to pass it on to Waltham Partnership for Youth. And I'm going to stop sharing because they do have their own slides, but I'm going to go through this one first. I'm not sure if you wanted us to use this slide.
Thanks, Brenda. I think we can probably just switch over to our slides. Appreciate though.
Perfect.
Just one second. Great. Well, thank you everyone so much for having us tonight. We're really excited to be able to present to all of you the latest Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, which was administered this past spring. And I'll share a little bit more about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, but first just wanted to introduce myself and my colleagues. So my name is Ivy Watts, and I am the Coalition Coordinator for our coalition. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the coalition is in just a moment. Shanisha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Shanisha Christmas. I am the Youth Leadership Coordinator for WPY's Coalition, as well as the Director of Youth Development at the high school.
And I am Magali Garcia Plech, the Operations Director with Waltham Partnership for Youth. Really excited to be here, only in my third month in this position and in Waltham, so I'm excited to be a part of this community.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And again, thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're excited to share the data with you. Tonight, we're going to be sharing data with you that focuses on mental health and substance use. So every 2 years, we administer the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, or you'll hear us refer to it as the YRBS. And so in spring, we administered it to both high school and middle school students. We'll show you the data on how many students have taken it, the demographics of students who took it, and we'll also give you the information on mental health and substance use. This is a CDC survey, and so we use the questions from the CDC that were developed. We also have some space where we can create our own questions or change some questions so that the questions are most relevant to the Waltham community. And so a little bit about who we are as a coalition and the work that we do. So the Waltham Partnership for Youth Coalition, we're a multi-sector community coalition. So we're made up of adults who work in the mental health field, school committee members, we have city council members, we have parents, we have lots of different folks from different sectors, as well as our youth who are our trailblazers, who work together really to raise awareness around mental health through our meetings and through resource sharing and through events, as well as really helping to reduce substance use for our Waltham youth. And our trailblazers are our youth, and so they are an integral part of our coalition. And they are really our student leaders who are really paving the groundwork to educate their peers on mental health and substance use prevention. And Shanisha spearheads the Trailblazers. And so if there's any time you want more information about the Trailblazers, or if you have a child that would like to get involved, Shanisha's contact information is on the screen, and feel free to reach out to her or any of us for more information about the coalition and the Trailblazers. And so now we're going to dive into the data itself, and I'll pass it over to Shanisha.
Thank you, Ivy. So just to go over the data summary before we begin sharing the data with you, the survey was conducted in high school and in both middle schools. At the high school level, we just want to remind you that this data was collected last spring, so spring of 2020. And from that survey, we have 742 students who replied and actually completed the survey. From those 742, there were 22 that were not completed in the time frame. So the time frame was about a week for all students to complete it and get it in. Because some of our students were hybrid or virtual, we just had to make sure that they completed it within a time span to make sure that it was accurate data. Students who completed 20 questions or less, that data was also not included into the overall response rate. So from that 742, the valid response rate is 678 responses, which is lower than our usual years. But again, just keep in mind that many of our students were virtual or hybrid. For the middle school, we had a little more response from students, and there were a total of 1,103 responses that were valid. Our demographics, we kind of break it down into three sectors. For the high school in particular, out of the 678 total, the race/ethnicity, we broke it down into Latinx, white, multiracial, and Black. Now, when we use the term multiracial, we're not saying that students are reporting multiple different races at once. We're using that as there's multiple different races within that category. We are looking at expanding our language around this. So if there is any tips around that before we give out our final results, please let us know, because we want to make sure that we have a community where we can use the correct language to kind of vocalize all of our students. So for students that reported being Latinx, there were 39% of students from the 678. There were 38% reported white, 11% multiracial. Again, those are students who identified as Asian, Middle Eastern, mixed race / ethnicity, American Indian, or Alaska Native. And for the Black percentage was 11%. Looking at gender identity, there were 49% of students who identified as female, 45% identified as male, and 5% that identified as non-binary gender expansive. We wanted to make sure that we broke sexual orientation, completely different than gender identity, because we know those two things are different. So for that, we have 70% of high school students who reported being straight or heterosexual, and 23% identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus community. For middle school, we broke it up in the same categories. There are 43% of students who reported Latinx, 31% of students who reported being white, 15% in the multiracial group, 9% Black. And then for gender identity, we have 49% of students in the middle school who reported being male, 41% of the students female, 8% of the students reported being non-binary gender expansive. For the sexual orientation, 61% of students reported heterosexual, and 26% reported being part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Great, thanks, Shanisha. So now we're going to focus on the mental health portion of our data. So we'll be going over depression, suicide, and stress. We're going to start off with depression. And so in this graph here, you can see that we're showing data from 2017, 2019, and 2021. Again, this survey is administered every 2 years. And so you can see here, the top line is reflecting high school, and the bottom line is reflecting middle school. And so there's been an increase in students who have reported experiencing depression in the past year for both middle school and high school students. For high school students, that was an increase of 5% from 35 to 40%. And for middle school students, that was an increase of 3% from 27 to 30%. We have a breakdown as well of all of the different demographic categories that Shanisha just went over. And so you're able to see those students who identify different races and ethnicities and their rates of depression, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. One thing of note is that we have definitely recognized here how there are higher rates for those who identify with the LGBTQ plus community for depression. And that's an area that WPY is really committed to partnering more with other organizations in Waltham that do work with this community so that we can really do more work around raising awareness and to support these students. So you're able to see the trends. You're also able to see that those in the Black and Latinx community for both high school and middle school have higher rates of depression. So we're able to make some observations here about different groups as well.
Looking at stress in the past year, we see a little bit of a difference when it comes to depression. Again, we're looking at the trends between 2017 and 2021, again, taking in the COVID-19 pandemic. For stress levels, we ask students about overwhelming stress, right? So how overwhelmed are they that they can't do something that they're used to doing or usually like doing, for example, hanging out with friends or joining clubs or being in contact with someone that they really have a strong relationship with. So looking at stress over the past couple of years, as you can see, the high school line is on the top, where high school students reported 39%. So that is up from 2019 from 37%. For middle schoolers, that percentage also went up from 23% in 2019 to 25% of middle schoolers reporting stress in 2021. Looking over to your right-hand side, the first column is high school students. The second column is middle school students. As you can see, again, we have a highest reporting in the LGBTQ plus community of students reporting high levels of stress. So we do want to make sure, again, as Ivy said, that we're making sure that we're paying attention to the data that we're being reported by students, and that we're making sure that we are looking at ways to communicate with students and collaborate with different clubs and activities within the school to make sure these students are supported. Females in the high school report the highest, females are the second highest level of reporting stress in high school. As we can see, the non-binary gender expansive is the highest grouping for stress levels. In the high school, 45% of students who reported Black or African American are also one of the highest groupings for stress levels. In the middle school, again, we really want to pay attention to our non-binary and LGBTQ plus community when it comes to stress levels.
So now we're taking a look at students who have considered attempting suicide within the past year. So again, if we look just between 2019 and 2021, for high school students in 2019, the rate of students who reported seriously considering attempting suicide was at 13%, and that rose to 15% among high school students in 2021. We can see that the rates for considering suicide among middle school students has pretty dramatically increased over the last couple of years as well, going from 15% in 2017 to 23% in 2019 and 27% in 2021. Similarly, for the stress, and as we saw with stress and depression, we can see that our non-binary gender expansive youth and our LGBTQ plus youth are experiencing higher levels of suicidal ideation compared to female and male students and heterosexual straight students. And this is even more dramatic when we look at the middle school numbers as well. So for non-binary gender expansive youth in high school, those rates have at least doubled between 2019 or when we look at the overall population. And when we look at middle school students, specifically for non-binary gender expansive students, their rates are triple what the overall population looks like. And we know we're at a high school PTO meeting, but we're also making sure to present the middle school data, knowing that these middle school students will be in the high school soon. So we're trying to think also towards the future about what sorts of supports we might be able to start developing both at Waltham Partnership for Youth within the high school and within Waltham as a community.
Awesome. Great. And so some of this data might be surprising to you, or some of it you might have been thinking that you might have expected to see. And so we wanted to go over now what some of the causes of stress are. So another question that students were asked were, what were some of the causes of their stress, those high stress levels they were experiencing? And so we have data here for both high school and middle school. And I think Magali made a great point that the middle school students will eventually be at the high school. And so how can we start implementing some change or supports for students now and for the future? And so we can see here that the top stressor for both high school and middle school students was schoolwork and academic stress. And then it gets a little bit different depending on the age group. But for high school, after schoolwork and academic stress, the next stress is around their future. So we're really kind of still focusing on that school piece of what's going to happen next, of college and jobs. Then the stress becomes around body image, COVID-related stress, and all of the issues that come along with COVID, and then family issues as well. Those are the top 5 reported stressors for high school students. And for middle school students, after the schoolwork, COVID-related stress, body image, family issues, and then finally racism, racial discrimination, or racial violence. So there's very similar causes of stress for the high school and middle school students. They might not all be one-to-one in their ranking. The middle school did have the racism, where high school did not have that as a top stressor. But these are the top 5 that were causing stress for our students. And we do acknowledge that we are giving you a lot of information on mental health, and we hope you're not taking feverishly notes right now. We will be able to provide the full report of the YRBS. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you will have access to that if you'd like to see it. Great. So now we're going to transition into substance use. So that was the data on depression, stress, and suicidal ideation. So now we're going to focus on tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. So we're going to start off with alcohol. So now we're looking at the rate of alcohol use in the past 30 days. And so here you're able to see that there's a decline in use for both high school and middle school students. So for high school students, we have data that goes back to 2015 here in this case. We see that it started off 2015 high at 37%, and now we're making a difference and getting down to 16% for high school students. For middle school students, there's been a little bit of up and down, but from last time 8%, and now being at 3% for alcohol use in the past 30 days for middle school students. So you're also able to see here again the breakdown of demographic information. You're able to see here that different from when we were looking at the mental health data, those who identify or of the white race have the higher rates of alcohol current use, specifically for high school, and it's a little bit more even throughout the middle school, but multiracial here had the highest rates. Females from high school had the highest rates of alcohol use. And again, we see this LGBTQ plus community standing out as having high rates of alcohol use, similar to high rates of mental health issues as we were just looking at.
Now we're going to look at marijuana in the past 30 days. So when we say the past 30 days, it's the past 30 days since the survey was completed. So this is thinking back into the spring of 2020 or 2021, excuse me. So when we look at the marijuana rates, we see that there is a steep decline on marijuana use reported by students. For the high school in particular, which is that top line, 2015, we had 20% of students reporting using marijuana in the past 30 days. Throughout the years between 2017 and 2020, the numbers have gone up, down, and kind of went up and down throughout the years. In 2021, again, remember this is during the COVID pandemic, the marijuana use went down to 9% from 20% in 2019. Now, we can make a lot of different assumptions, but we're not going to go through those assumptions today. Our real work is just to look at what the data is providing us and then kind of evaluate how to do the work. For middle schoolers, in 2019, the percentage of middle schoolers reporting using marijuana was 5%. That dropped down to 1% in 2021. The students who report being Black or in African-American community also reported 17% of marijuana use, which is the highest rate amongst all of the race and ethnicities that we see. Again, for gender, our non-binary gender expansive group has the highest percentage, which is 20% of reported marijuana use in the past 30 days. And for sexual orientation, again, we have the LGBTQ plus students who reported 18% use of marijuana. We are happy to see that the numbers have declined significantly, for the middle school students. But again, our highest rate for students in the LGBTQ plus community will be 4% at the middle school. So we just want to keep our eye on that and remember that the last survey in 2021 was during the pandemic. We would be very interested to see what those rates look like in the next 2 years when hopefully things are back to a normal. But just wanted to make sure to stand out that the marijuana use for students has decreased over the years. So there's great work that's being done, but great work that still needs to be done.
Great. And similarly to what Shanisha was just talking about with the decline and the assumptions that we might be making from this data, we wanted to now touch on vaping as well and see that there's also been a decline similar to alcohol and similar to marijuana in this data. So we can see for high school, there has been a dip from 2019 to 2021 of 23% of high school students vaping in the last 30 days, as well as down to 10% for students in 2021, high school students who had vaped in the last 30 days. And then for middle school, we see 10% in 2019 decrease down to 4% of students vaping in the past 30 days for middle school students. So again, it's great that we're seeing that decline. Definitely agree with Shanisha. Be very interested to see the data in the next couple of years. Hoping that everything is kind of back to normal, and we're able to see if this was something that was due to COVID and being home or some other factor. And again, we don't have that data. We're making inferences and assumptions in our own head as we go through, but really just looking at this data and kind of reflecting of what we can do, what programming or supports we can put in place to continue to keep these numbers low. And so again, you see high school and middle school broken down by demographics. Here for race and ethnicity, for the high school, those white students, 11% was the highest percentage of vape use. Middle school, the Latinx community. And then we also see here that the non-binary gender expansive as well as LGBTQ plus both have higher rates, again, of vaping use. So again, something that we're keeping in the front of our minds and making sure that we are going to do some work and programming around that as well.
So now we're really going to take a look at some of these connections between substance use and misuse and mental health challenges. So specifically thinking about depression and those youth who have also told us that they are vaping or consuming alcohol or marijuana across both high school and middle school students. So when we look at the graphs, the bars on the left-hand side are students who are experiencing depression and using that particular substance. So when we look at high school students, we can see that those students that are both vaping or students who vape and use marijuana are also more likely to also be experiencing depression. Whereas students who are reported using alcohol, about 50% of those students also reported having experienced depression. When we look at the middle school data, we can see a pretty dramatic difference here across the board for students who reported using substances from vaping, alcohol, and marijuana. We can see that at least 70%, 71% of those students also reported experiencing depression. So this is just something important to note, that particularly among middle school students, but also high school students in terms of vaping and marijuana, there's a pretty clear correlation between those students who are using those substances and also experiencing depression. Great, yes. So now we're going to look at a similar side in terms of suicidal ideation. So here we can actually see that at the high school level, students who use substances are actually less inclined to have considered suicide, and that's across all three substances. This is particularly true when we look at alcohol. 25% of students who reported using alcohol reported experiencing suicidal ideation. So the vast majority of students consuming alcohol did not report suicidal ideation at the high school level. However, when we look at the middle school level, this pattern is reversed. So again, similar to middle school students who reported experiencing depression, we're seeing that middle school students who reported experiencing or having suicidal ideation were also using different substances. So we see 63% of middle school students who reported vaping also reported considering suicide. 65% of those who used alcohol also considered suicide, and 85% who used marijuana considered suicide as well.
So what's next? We have all of this information. I know we kind of threw all of this information at you tonight, and I'm sure there's questions. So please feel free to add your questions in the chat box, or feel free to contact us after and we can answer any specific questions. But now that we have and we showed this information to you, what's next? So the Waltham Partnership for Youth Coalition is committed to using this data to inform our work. But this is not only for our work, right? This is also community data. This is for everyone that's watching this. We want to make sure that we're giving this information to the community, because this is not something that we should just hold in our corner and try to figure out on our own. We understand that Waltham is a diverse community and many different thoughts and opinions do matter. So we want to make sure that we include all voices to make sure that we are thinking about the health and wellness of all of our youth. So providing programming to raise awareness on a mental wellness and suicide prevention is something that WPY works strongly at doing each and every year. Some examples of this is the mental health awareness event, which just happened in September, where we had a wonderful event outside before the weather that got a little too cold. And it was in the Waltham Commons. We invited community members, school members, as well as young people to come and enjoy the day and also learn about the different resources about mental health. We also have an upcoming event, the self-care event in December, which will be a virtual event, which we are inviting all of you to. We will have more information on that, and we can share that with Ms. Pena, and she can also share that with you. But that will be a virtual event where we will have different speakers come in to talk about how to relay and talk about stress, especially during stressful times. And we do want to be aware that holiday seasons may be a stressful time for people. So we just want to give helpful tips and hopes as the holidays are near. The Trailblazers will continue doing their work around mental health and substance prevention. We do a lot of advocacy around the big tobacco company and really looking at how young people are targeted by the fruity flavors and how they're really targeted to buy and spend their money on these products and then become addicted to it. We also do a mental health week within school, where we know that the most stressful time for our young people is during big exams. So that could be midterms, finals, PSATs. We know those are stressful times. So we, as young people, the Trailblazers, come up with different activities and helpful tips to provide to their peers to get through those stressful times. We even give healthy snacks and different activities during lunch periods. So students are not cramming in their last minute of studying, but making sure that they're having something healthy going into their bodies to make sure that they're going to do well on their tests. We also want to increase collaboration with groups at schools who focus on supporting LGBTQ plus youth, whether that be the GSA clubs at our school or any other clubs within the school that focus on specifically LGBTQ plus communities. We also are looking at the long-term initiatives of implementing mental health focus into all programs around WPY. So WPY, we also have different areas of work when we are face-to-face with our youth. We have summer internship programs where we make sure our young people are ready and prepared for the workforce. We also make sure that they have the ability to practice their soft skills, their interview skills, and also meet with employers to kind of establish some kind of relationship with them so they know what to look forward to when applying for summer internships. So we also want to make sure that we're using this data when we're talking to youth about their internships as well. We also have a program called Wraparound, where we're working with students, bilingual students who are new to the community of Waltham, and we want to make sure that they have the right support that they need in order to be successful leaders within their community as well. So in all total, that we want to make sure that this data is being used in all of our initiatives at WPY and at the high school. And lastly, we want to reflect on how you, as community members, as parents, as staff, as people, as part of the community, we want to make sure that you will use this data to inform your work in programming or parenting or any way that you interact with youth. Again, this data is not just for WPY, it's for the community. So we would love to invite you to our coalition meetings, which happen the first Wednesday of every month. And we want to make sure that we're bringing in multiple different voices to make sure that Waltham is a healthy, just, and engaging place for all of our young people to thrive.
Perfect. Great. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I know we went through the mental health and substance use data, and there was a lot of data on that slide, on the slides that we provided to you. And so we're making final edits on the full YRBS report. So in addition to mental health and substance use, we also ask questions about students' feelings of safety. We ask about bullying. We ask about things like menstrual hygiene. And so there's a lot of different questions that we ask. And so we look at risky behaviors, but also protective factors for our youth. And so our evaluation team is making some final edits to that YRBS report. And so once we have that, we're going to upload that to our website. We'll send it out when that is completed. So we can send that out to Brenda, and then that can be distributed in whatever way makes the most sense. But that will also be available on our website, so walthampartnershipforyouth.org, and you can get directed to our coalition website, which will have the most updated YRBS report. Right now, we still have the 2019 report up there, so you're free to check out our website and to look at the full YRBS report from 2019, just to get an idea of what the 2021 report will look like. But again, we will get that uploaded as soon as we can, and we'll communicate that out when we have it. And so again, as Shanisha said, we really invite you to reflect on how, looking at the data that we just went through, how you can use the data to influence your own work, whether that's through different supports, whether that's through different modes of communication, whether that's through different programming. And so we really invite you today to take some time to reflect on that data that you looked at, and see what role you can play as a community member, as a parent, as a staff member, in making a difference and helping us to keep numbers low or to reduce levels, specifically in the mental health area, as we noted. So we would love to open it up if anyone has any questions for us. We would love to hear from you, but we really do thank you all for your time and hearing the data tonight.
Thank you so much. So we will wait a few minutes. So right now we're about close to 38 minutes in, but we will be available for questions. Is this something that I could share with my with families during my principal coffee hour as well as an attachment? Because there will be some resources that I'd like to add to
Yes.
the slide and the information that I'll be presenting. So that would be great.
Yes, I can send those to you right after this.
Okay, perfect. So as of right now, we don't have any questions, but we can definitely hold on for a few minutes.
Okay.
As we wait, I just want to say thank you to the families and everyone that's watching today for attending this this presentation. It's really appreciated by us because we know the work cannot only be done by us. We need a whole community to get this work done. Again, if you guys do want to join the force of the coalition that is working specifically on mental health and substance prevention for young people, please reach out to Ms. Pena, and she can get in contact with us and we can give you more information about that.
Thank you, Shanisha. Elizabeth, do you want to add anything, or Meg?
I just want to thank the Partnership for Youth for this really important and insightful information. I'm so glad that the organization exists to help us understand what students are not telling us and helping us try to get out ahead of it and find some solutions and supports, because it's serious, and I hope that people will take it very seriously.
Absolutely. And this is, so Shanisha had the opportunity, just to share with families, Shanisha had the opportunity to present this information to our staff during our most recent PDRT. It's information that is also shared with our support staff to be able to discuss discuss supports and resources that may be available to students, because I do think that sometimes we don't necessarily know what all of our students are thinking. Definitely, clearly, the data shows that, but some of it can be alarming as well, right? So we want to be able to provide those ongoing supports.
Definitely.
So as of right now, I don't see any questions. So I think we could close out early. So again, thank you so much to the WPY team. Much appreciated. I think it's nice to be able to have these opportunities to present information. I don't know if everyone in the community knows that this is something that is conducted and done. So I do think it's important to make sure that we're sharing it with the larger community so that they have an understanding in terms of our students' needs. Again, Principal Coffee Hour on Friday. I will send an update again to all families with the link before that day comes. And we will have more information. If you have any Aspen questions, please make sure to fill out that form. We will send that out to families as well, put it on social media. And if there's any other related questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email, and I will do my best to get those answers for you for Friday.
And I'd
Thank
just
you.
like to point out that the advantage of this platform is not only the translation services, but that the meeting is recorded and is available for watching afterwards. So parents, families, guardians who weren't able to view live will have a chance to catch up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So again, have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday morning.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.